Hey, I'm Ross.
And I'm Jonathan.
Hey, we're kicking off our first episode, and we're going to start with a conversation about union with Christ. So, this idea of union, I think is, incredibly foundational. I think it can be paradigm shifting even. For many of us that grew up in church or are familiar with the Christian story, I think we kind of know it. Just as a real life example, I grew up in church. I went to a Christian liberal arts college. I studied ministry, then I went to seminary and did my Master of Divinity, and I would say that I never really encountered a real teaching on what does it mean to be in union with Christ.
Yeah, I would say that I had a similar experience. Grew up in church, was really familiar with scriptures that were about union with Christ, but always kind of interpreted it through this language of relationship with Christ.
Right.
So like scriptures that said that you're in Christ, I just kind of took to mean in relationship with Christ.
Yes, exactly.
And never really, just kind of brushed over this deeper kind of like mystery of what it means to be united with Christ.
And some streams of Christianity get this much better than others.
Right.
And so, maybe some people are kind of going, hey, that's a core thing.
Right.
You
like,
should
how did
taught,
you not know that?
So,
right.
Yeah, well, it's a life-giving thing. We want to talk a lot about that. I think it's important to start with the idea from the very beginning. When God creates the world,
Right.
He has union with Himself, and out of that perfect love, He creates.
Right.
And desires that we would be His image bearers and that He would have union with us. And, sometimes we stop short of union by saying relationship. And one of the questions I've been asking people recently is, how many people are you connected to, you think? Thousands?
Thousands, lots.
If you're on social media, maybe thousands. How many people do you have a relationship with?
A smaller number, but still
significant. Maybe
quite a few.
A couple dozen. Maybe if you're really social, you got 100 or 200 people you're in a relationship with. But how many people do you have union with?
Just one.
That's one, yeah. Your spouse.
Yeah.
That's the only real human relationship that has the idea of this oneness,
right,
where two people become one.
Yeah, and it's not just some analogy. It has real bearing on the way that we live our lives. In 1 Corinthians 6, Paul's talking to the Corinthian church about their sexual ethic, and he's talking about us as Christians as members of Christ's body, and how whenever we conduct ourselves in life, in relationships, that we have to think about ourselves as part of Christ. And it kind of adds this sacredness to everything that you do, from relationships to work to every part of your life. Because you're not just your own anymore. You were bought with a price, and now you're part of Christ. You're part of His body, is what what Paul says.
He's in you, and you're in Him.
Right, and so he talks about in this very literal way that should have a literal bearing on the way that we live our lives.
Yeah, and that's why we think it is such a paradigm-shifting idea. And it's really the scandal of the gospel is that Christ would come and live in you, that the God of the universe would live in you.
Right.
That's the mystery that we know that's been revealed to us, and it should change everything about what we do. And that's one of the things we want to talk about in this whole series is how does that idea start to shape all of our thinking about how we live in the world, how we participate in Christ's mission, how we think about our neighbors, how we think about our work, and what specific things God's put on our heart to care about and to see as something that we can participate in restoring to full union.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Next week, we're going to continue our conversation by looking at how union with Christ affects each one of us individually.